Welcome to Effective Cannabis Conversations, the show where knowledge meets curiosity and stigma takes a back seat, where we uncover the transformative potential of cannabis in health. Before we dive in, just a quick reminder, the information we're sharing today is for health awareness only. It is not medical advice or a substitute for consulting your doctor. It is here to help you learn, ask the right questions, and make informed decisions about your health and your care. Welcome back to another Effective Cannabis Conversation. I'm Debi Wimberley, your host, and I'm joined by Alex Mitchell, certified cannabis coach. We're diving into one of the most under-supported and undereducated and misunderstood transitions in health, perimenopause and menopause. Hi, Alex. Thank you for being here. And this is a conversation we have often, and I look forward to diving into this with you more. So if you take a few minutes and introduce yourself, and then we'll dive into this conversation.
Great. Thanks, Debbie, for having me on again. As Debbie said, I am a cannabis coach, and then I transitioned to becoming a hypnotist, and I did that work for a few years. And now I'm actually retired. But just because I'm retired doesn't mean that I've stopped learning or talking about the things that are really interesting to me. So I am currently training as a menopause health coach through a program called Girls Gone Strong. I'm really doing this because I need to understand it for myself. I find myself supporting a lot of women in my community, whether that be at school, where my teenager goes, or friends that I've had from the cannabis world, people that I've met other places. I find myself supporting them quite a bit. So I decided I was going to take some time and get myself a little more educated. If you are on this journey too and you don't know where to go, there's also a tremendous amount of good information. You definitely want to find one that knows what she's doing and is definitely science backed, etc. And so I have a few of those that I would recommend. Probably the fastest and easiest one to get to is Kelly Casperson. She's actually a urologist, and she's based here in Washington, where I am. And she's written several books. She also has a really great podcast called You Are Not Broken. She is a very trusted source. So that's who I am.
Well, thank you, Alex, for sharing that. So let's dive into this conversation and let's just talk a little bit about your journey and how you got here. How did cannabis first become part of your own experience with perimenopause and menopause? And was there a moment where you realized, wait, this is actually helping?
There was, and it's kind of funny because, as you know, and if people have seen me before, they know I am a medical cannabis patient. And I use medical cannabis daily, except when I start thinking, oh, I feel great, and I stop using it. And that's what happened. And actually, I discovered that it was helping me in more than just the thing that I take it for, which is PTSD. I would miss a couple of days of my medical cannabis, and then I'd have a hot flash in the middle of the night. And then I would get back on my cannabis and they'd go away. And I'm not kidding you. I think it took probably 6 or 7 times of this happening for me to go, oh, there's something here that's helping the hot flashes. And I'm a cannabis coach, but you just don't think about it. There's no research, right? Nobody knows, but it definitely was helping. So then I did it because I like to experiment on myself because I can do that. I did a few tests. I didn't bother to narrow it any further than this, but I narrowed it down to CBG. So my formula that I take as a medicinal patient, as a medical patient, has all of the cannabinoids in it, both the acid forms and the neutral decarbed forms. And so I didn't bother to isolate whether it was CBG or CBGA that was helping me. I just knew that it was CBG. And so when there were days when I didn't take my normal formula so I could kind of test this on myself, I would take THC and CBD and their A's as well, and realized it was the CBG for me. And so that was that light bulb moment of, oh, actually, I am not in perimenopause quite where I thought I was because I didn't know, right? Nobody was talking about it at that point. I just knew, oh, I've got hot flashes and now they're better. And so great, that's what's happening to me in perimenopause. They're the hot flashes. This is before we all knew what we know now. And if you don't know what we know now, there are lots of books and documentaries out there that will help you. There is a documentary in particular that I highly recommend. It is available on PBS, your local public broadcasting station here in the US. It is not available outside the US, and I know you have some international readers and listeners. So I don't know what's available outside the US, but inside the US, it is called The Factor. This documentary is available out there for women to see, and it's 90 minutes, a little less than 90 minutes, and you get so educated in such a short amount of time versus needing to sit down and read a book. The books are there if you figure out the areas you want to dive deeper into. If there are things in particular that you're like, oh, that's me. I have that. And now I need to understand a little more about what that means. These books are there. There are great ones out there. By Dr. Mary Claire Haver has one. Dr. Casperson has one. I think Dr. Vonda Wright has one. There are tons of books out there now written by these doctors that are in this documentary. And so for me and kind of what I do, pretty much if they were in the documentary, I feel like they've been vetted enough for me to go, okay, and I've gotten to see them and hear them and so I pay attention to them on social media because they are up to date and they're following kind of what is the latest science happening. And sometimes they're involved in the latest science. You know, Dr. Vonda Wright is the one who has defined and identified, along with some other researchers, that there is a musculoskeletal syndrome of menopause. So these are the kinds of resources that are out there for women if they don't know where they are. And now I think I have to loop back to, so I told my CBG story, and then I just want to say that's my story with how I noticed it was working. And we may touch on this again later, but the endocannabinoid system is specific to you and your body and what's happening. And so what worked for me might not work for you, but you won't know until you try it. I think the key is that we have to try these things. It's just like if you are having trouble sleeping and you think, well, you know, listening to a guided meditation might help me. If you never try it, you'll never know. And so it's similar, I think, for cannabis with this. If you are comfortable with it and you want to try it, you know, you're not going to hurt yourself. CBG is non-intoxicating. What if it makes your hot flashes go away?
I'm glad that you dug in and did a real study on yourself to understand that it was helping you.
Yeah. And, you know, I think that's how I approach all of my cannabis consumption it's a trial and error. This is why it's so important to track what you're doing so that you know what is it that's working. And for me, I just really had to show myself that it was the CBG. And so then it was like, if I were not going to take, because maybe I was going to do a little break, I would still take the CBG. And I had a misconception thinking, oh, everything's under control. Well, it really wasn't, which, you know, we'll learn later. But in the moment, it was like, oh, a light bulb of, oh, my medical cannabis is actually helping me with my hot flashes. This is amazing. Right. So I'm like telling everybody, hey, CBG is what's working here. And, you know, some women it works for and some it doesn't. But it's definitely worth a try, especially now with what I know now and knowing who can and can't take hormone replacement therapy. I believe, and again, I'm not a medical professional, but I believe cannabis would be a fantastic alternative for women who have hormone estrogen specific breast cancer and to help control their hot flashes. CBG. It's worth a try.
Yeah,
I'm not
hot
a medical
flashes.
professional.
Right. No, neither one of us are. But we both have studied cannabis and the endocannabinoid system and have our own personal experience, so we can talk about it from our own personal experiences. And that's why these conversations are important, because everybody's ECS is different. And so my response is definitely different than your response. As you've aged, learned more, how has the way you use cannabis for your health changed? Not just what you use, but when, why, and how intentionally.
I think this is a fabulous question because it definitely has. Now, I am a medical cannabis patient, so I have a baseline of cannabis that, unless I start feeling really great and convince myself I shouldn't take it, I'm on. And I think now this year, like, gone, you know what? No, you're just on it. You just don't even take breaks. You're just on it. Because when I try to take a break, all my symptoms come back. So I have this level. And however, as I've been going through this whole transition time of my life, I have noticed ways that I can use cannabis to help me even beyond what it already does for me for my PTSD. And so I'll use today as an example. I traveled last week, and so my schedule's been kind of off, and I'm dragging a little bit. And my light box cord was broken, so I wasn't having my strong sunlight in Seattle in the mornings, and I didn't want to go to the gym today. And I know that when I go to the gym as a woman in menopause and I exercise and I do it consistently, it actually helps everything overall, my whole life, my whole body, everything in my life. It positively impacts it. So, what I have learned to do is take a little cannabis. It's like, all right, you haven't had your cannabis yet today. Take the edible portion because we know that's not going to kick in for a while. Get yourself in the car, get to the gym, go on a little walk, have a little cannabis through inhalation to instantly 5 minutes go, whoa, I feel so much better, and get myself inside to the gym. And then the exercise takes over. But I think, for me, it really has changed around exercise, using it to help my motivation. If my motivation is low or I'm not feeling like it, and that can be tied directly to everything that's going on in us in this menopausal transition, right? Lots of things are going on for women. Everybody's life is different. Maybe I'm having pressure at home. I've got a teenager. Maybe we had a bad interaction and my motivation is low, right? There are lots of ways that I can use it to help improve my mood. And I will also say, because I brought up the teenager thing, maybe it's been a rough few days with my teenager and I need to like reset my brain around this teenager. Well, I might consume a little bit before he comes home from school because then my mood is in a better place. I'm more able to be that even tempered, which then he's able to mirror a little better. Because if I'm dysregulated, then he's dysregulated. And there goes Zoom again, giving me the thumbs up. But I think there's
That's a
ways to
good
use it.
thumbs up.
Yeah, there's ways to use it, I creatively in the ways that women need it, right? Maybe it's that that your knees are hurting. And so maybe you actually take yours, before you go exercise and you wait for it to kick in and then you go for your walk so your knees aren't hurting when you walk. I think there are a lot of ways that women can get creative with it. It's also incredibly useful for sex, right? We know, and I've had conversations about cannabis and sex, and I think you probably have an issue coming out at some point, you will, about cannabis and sex. Definitely can help things too. So, like, there are lots of different ways you can start to utilize cannabis. And again, if you are in an adult use state, recreational use is legal in your state, and you've not tried it and you want to, this is a great way to see, hey, like really show yourself, is it working? Is it not working for me? Start low and go slow. That's what we always say as cannabis coaches. And there are lots of cannabis educators out there. There are free resources available on things like healer.com. I think he has a great protocol there. Here's what you do. Here's how you test it on yourself. Here's what you do, and it walks you through. I'm glad that I know all that I know about cannabis because I think it makes it easier for me to apply it within my life during the menopause transition. And so for women who aren't that comfortable with it, I would encourage experimentation and asking questions.
Or reach out to someone that is trained in this field and that can answer your questions. Pay for that consultation, invest in yourself. There's a number of us out here that can have these consultations with you, and then you don't have to do so much trial and error to figure it out at the beginning. Maybe you have some direction on how to move forward. I think that investing in yourself is the most important thing you can do when it comes to taking care of your health, because it's what
Great
helps.
point. And you can see that I'm coming from the I'm retired and I don't want to do a session because I'm retired. But Debbie is absolutely right. And I think there's a lot that you could do. And I think using the Effective Cannabis newsletter articles as resources of really understanding what this is helpful too, right? This is here to help people understand what cannabis is. And so I think that that's a useful way to start too.
That's why we do this every month. We put out this information so that people can learn and learn how to explore, who to reach out to, have resources. So one of the things you talked about there is this not taking breaks. And I think this is an important conversation to follow back up on. We often hear around that you need to take tea breaks, you need to take a break from your medicine. But I've been using cannabis medically for 11 years now, and I've never taken a tea break. I microdose. But when you said that you've learned that there's certain things you just don't take a break for, can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think that's something that everybody thinks, oh, well, I'm going to have to take a break. And when we're talking about our health and our conditions that we're dealing with, there's some conditions you just can't take a break with.
Yeah, I think I can speak to it from my lived experience of having PTSD and how that expresses for me. I did deliberately take a break because I felt like, yes, we're told, right? It's kind of the received truth. And I think I've now shown myself it's not worth it for me because it really doesn't change that much for me. So when I deliberately took a break, I was going to take a 2 week break. And at the end of the first week, I ended that because what happened was my symptoms for my PTSD, the things that cannabis absolutely helps me keep under control, were back with a vengeance. And I'm like, I woke up and I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? And that shows up for me as anxiety immediately upon awaking, like waking up terribly anxious and not able to kind of get through that. It shows up as not sleeping. It shows up as just being really like hyper vigilant. And so when I'm taking cannabis, I don't experience that. Like it doesn't, like I wake up and I don't feel anxiety in the morning. And that was a revelation for me to really get through that. And once I got my medical cannabis really dialed in for me and what level I needed to be at to have that experience, it's made a huge difference. So I had intended to break for 2 weeks, and at the end of the first week, I'm like, why? Why am I doing this to myself? Because the break felt worse than having maybe take a little bit more cannabis, right? And yeah, I think there are other safer ways for me to do that from a mood perspective. Like if I were going to do it again, if I felt like I needed to do it again, I would just titrate down. I just wouldn't take it all away cold turkey like I did, and because that was just too much for me. And that's
Well,
my personal experience with it.
well, and I think you and I had a conversation during that period, and I was asking you, why are you doing this?
Yeah,
And that's when you started saying, well,
right.
basically, it's what I'm told that you should do. And it's like, well,
Right.
that doesn't necessarily mean it's so.
Yeah.
So, I think that just because it's been out there and people have said it, you need to do what works best for you.
Yeah.
And I definitely do not recommend anybody just stop everything, especially when you're treating a more chronic condition, that you just stop it and see what happens. That's not a good way to go. For this upcoming issue that this talk is going to be in, I got to speak with Dr. Amanda Raymond, who's a researcher and scientist, and we talked about hormone health as well. And we talked about how little education there is around menopause and how isolating that can feel. What have you done to allow yourself to speak to your family and educate them on this process that you're going through?
I think the first place I started, once I kind of realized what was happening, I mean, there were a few friends I was talking to of my age, right, who were like, I'm like, is this happening to you? Kind of conversation. But the first one was I referenced the M factor earlier. I went to see them, drove 2.5 hours north, got to meet Kelly Casperson. It was awesome up in Bellingham where she lives, saw the film when it was first being released, before it was even on PBS yet. And I came home and I said to my husband, I need you to see this movie. And he's like, okay, right? He's a great guy. He's like, he's on board, right? And so the movie was coming, I came here to Seattle and I got tickets for us. And he was one of, I think, 6 men in a 500-seat auditorium because they called out how many men are here. And he was one of the few that was there. So I took him to see that. And it was eye-opening for him. So this is why I encourage everyone to see the factor. And it is an easy way to educate your partners and family about what is potentially happening to you because not everybody has every symptom. But you're going to see things in this film where you're like, oh, that's me. And so I was then able to say to my husband, that's me. That's what I experience. Here it is. And he's able to hear it, not just from me, but from the experts, right? All women, by the way. Now, are there any men in that movie? Can't recall. If there are, there are very few, but mostly it's women talking who are also in their own lived experience or the doctors who've seen it happening. And so, because they're younger and it's not hitting them yet, right? But they're like, whoa, my eyes are open. Oh, this is what I have coming. So that really helped. I've also had friends watch it. I've hosted screenings of it in my hotel room at a conference because I wanted women to be able to see it. And so I use that as a way whenever someone says to me, I don't understand what's happening, what should I do? I'm thinking in particular about this one woman that I know through a coaching program that we're both in. There were lots of people writing back. I was the only one who said, go watch the doctor. She went and got it, and the next day she's messaging me going, I feel so much better because I know what's happening now. And I think that is huge for people. And so using that as a mechanism to start the conversation is one way to do it. I'll be honest, it's not an easy film to watch from a standpoint of being a woman because you're just so devastated by the fact that one study was taken and misconstrued and millions of women have suffered because of this. And they're still suffering because doctors still believe that. They don't understand that this research has been debunked long ago. And so if you go to your doctor and you say, I'm having symptoms and I'd like to explore hormone therapy, and you're told no, you need to fire that doctor and you need to go find one who will talk to you because that's old science. That's totally debunked. This is not, unless you are a specific high risk person, and you will know if that is you because those oncologists will tell you it is you, anybody can use it. And in fact, I would say also to cancer patients, go listen to Dr. Men, who is a breast cancer survivor. Listen to her talk about what women can actually have when they are that type of cancer, because she's lived it and she continues to live it. And you can have vaginal estrogen because it's not going to interfere with what's happening the rest of you. So I just think that piece, yeah, that's what I want women to know there.
I went through my menopause in like 1983, and I didn't even have friends to talk about it with or anybody else because I was 25. So we have to keep having these conversations and educating about this topic. So thank you for sharing that. What does your real life cannabis routine look like today? And how different is it from when you first started cannabis?
You know, when I first started cannabis, it was recreational. And then I realized, oh, and I think my story is on here somewhere. You could link to that. Oh, it's COVID and I'm actually feeling better when I should be totally stressed out. And it was because I'd upped my cannabis consumption. And that's what led me to getting training because I'm like, okay, there's something happening here to me. And so I think when I initially started cannabis, it was like kind of a fun thing. Now, of course, we know it's totally a medicinal thing for me, plus a recreational thing. It's both. It's right. It is my lifestyle. It is how I live. I grow cannabis. I make cannabis medicine. I, you know, use it myself. You know, I am taking care of myself in my little ecosystem of my health. But here's the thing. It's like, I kind of touched on them earlier. You have to know when to use it. I'm going to use my own story here. So today, what is today's date? February 17th. When we're recording this, February 17th, today is my 401 day streak on Peloton. Now you might be wondering, well, what does Peloton have to do with cannabis? But I wouldn't be on that 401 day Peloton streak without cannabis. That is how I got there. It is now an ingrained habit. And one of my favorite instructors on Peloton is Dennis, who is a yoga teacher and a cycling instructor. And Dennis always says when we're on the bike and he's calling out what we should be doing, he always says, I make suggestions, you make decisions. And that's what I want to say out to women watching this. I'm going to make suggestions, and I've made some already. You get to make the decision on what you do with that. So these are just suggestions. But like I referenced, using cannabis to help motivate me to work out is huge. As a menopausal woman, I am deep into my study, right? We know that exercising is really helping menopausal women. I lift weights 5 days a week. I'm on the treadmill 7 days a week, and I ride the bike 4 times a week. It's a lot of time. I am retired. If you're not retired, I feel for you. But the more that you do the exercise, the better you'll feel. And so if you need to use cannabis to help you get your exercise done, I think that's a great suggestion, because the key thing is you're out there and you're getting it done. Now, back in the day, my hairstylist used to tell me that she would drink a glass of wine and work out. But alcohol doesn't work for me in my menopausal body. Perhaps it's not working for you in your menopausal body as you're watching this. Maybe that alcohol needs to go away because I feel so much better without it. And cannabis can easily replace that. If you're looking for alcohol as relaxation, cannabis can do that, right? If you're looking at it, I mean, maybe you are motivated by it. Maybe it's a reward for you at the end of the day. Well, cannabis could certainly be that. There have certainly been times in my life when instead of using cannabis to motivate me to go out, I use cannabis at the end as a reward. Go do that 30-minute walk and you can sit down and do this when you get back, right? Kind of thing. So that's a suggestion too. Maybe you're feeling blah and because that happens to us in menopause, maybe your libido is totally tanked. Cannabis could help with that. So it's like you've got to explore how these things could help you, right? It's like it's trial and error for everybody. That's all I can say, because every ECS is different and it's all we're affected by our life. And so I think taking the time to use cannabis to increase your libido, perhaps just with yourself before you introduce that partner back in. I know that that has been incredibly valuable for me, because for me, there was a long period of perimenopause and menopause where I'm like, I don't want anybody touching me. Everybody just needs to leave me alone. I'm just there. I mean, this is why we see things, not that specifically, but like if you're out there on social media and you're a woman of around this age, you probably heard of the We Do Not Care Club, right? Melanie is amazing. This woman cracks me up, but she was truly sharing that first video that went viral, which she was truly sharing what it felt like to be in her life in perimenopause. And I'm like tearing up even now just thinking about it, because she started a movement. This woman from Florida who'd been out there talking about perimenopause, but finally really got real with it. And somehow it's just exploded because women know what she means. I kind of jokingly want to do a We Do Not Care Club cannabis coach edition, because it's like, we don't care that people, this is how I am. We do not care if people are like frowning at my cannabis use, because I feel good when I use it. And that is worth everything to me and my family. You know, we don't care that you are like, what do you mean you're putting a suppository up there? Well, if it helps me feel better, you don't get to say anything, right? And so it almost speaks to the stigma that we know exists about cannabis, right? I'm done with that. If cannabis is going to help you feel better, I'm all for it. Go for it. And don't let anybody shame you into not doing it.
Everything you said, it was great, but I think the biggest takeaway from that section is you get to make the choice.
Yeah.
You get to decide.
Yeah.
No one else does. It's your body.
Yep.
No one else's. You live it. No one else does.
Yep.
You get to decide.
Yep.
And that's when you start taking control of your own health and your own body and understanding what it needs. And that is truly an experience that has been very life-changing for me.
And for me, because like I said, without cannabis, I wouldn't be on that exercise streak that I'm on. And it's like an ingrained habit now, right? And that speaks to my, hypnotist brain part of like, how do things get wired into the brain? Well, I knew that I could wire in something. But again, without cannabis, I don't think I would be at that point, because there was no motivation.
From what you've learned, how do hormones and endocannabinoid system actually interact? Why does this connection matter so much during menopause?
I think, and I'm going to speak from my personal experience, and maybe you were the one who sent me this article. I think you were. recently there's information starting to come out about how estrogen can make cannabis receptors in the body more sensitive. And so that right there tells you they interact. And what we know, right, is the ECS sits over the top of every other system, and hormones are just another body system. I just recently been reading a lot about seasonal affective disorder because it is something that I experience in Seattle. I didn't experience it outside of Seattle. So it definitely has to do with the northern latitude and the cloud cover here. It all goes together, right? It's like they can't be separated, because if I'm totally stable on my cannabis consumption from a medical perspective and my hormones are stable, then things are great. I stumbled with my cannabis in the fall where I thought, oh, you're doing so great. You don't need as much as you normally do. Well, no, that was a mistake, because I didn't factor in seasonal affective disorder. And then I didn't factor in, which I've now learned, kind of where my light needs to actually be. And so my ECS was definitely out of whack, right? Because I wasn't sleeping well. Like I know, like if my ECS is out of whack, all these things are happening. And my solution is I need to get my cannabis back stable, because if I can get that stable, then everything else settles down. I was a medical cannabis patient before I started hormone replacement therapy, and I was doing okay on it. Absolutely. Vast improvement over what my life had been pre-cannabis. At some point, you and I will talk this through, but like I can see it in the data from my Apple Watch with my HRV, with heart rate variability, because I have records and I can see definitely when I started medical cannabis, because my heart rate variability vastly improved, like massively, to the tune of like, they're going, wow, that's a huge jump. So it's like when things are off for me, I get a cascade of symptoms, right? And if I can get it all balanced again, it hangs together rather well. And so I'm actually looking forward to next winter, because this winter I was off and seasonal affective disorder just really messed me up. And coming out of it now, I'm actually looking forward to next year, because, okay, I'm going to go in with my ECS balance, because I'm not going to change what I'm doing from my cannabis perspective. From a seasonal affective disorder is from before. I was on medical cannabis before I started hormone replacement therapy. I still had seasonal affective disorder every single year during that. I still had things happening. Now, what I think is going to happen is, because estrogen has me be more sensitive to my medical cannabis, I am going to further balance out. And next winter, what I want to see is a very stable medical cannabis consumption, a very stable menopause hormone replacement therapy, because I'm on lots of different hormones for that. I'm on all three. And then I want to see proper light box placement started at an appropriate time so that I don't sink again. Because what I think is next year, I'm going to show myself that all of that balanced, I don't have seasonal affective disorder. I don't experience it in the same way. I don't fall as deep. I don't get as depressed. And so that's why it matters to me. It's like I need these things to be balanced. And as I said earlier in our interview, I experiment on myself. This is me experimenting on myself again. And I write all of this down. I'm like, all right, I think I have figured out next winter how to have a great winter, even in very overcast, gray Seattle, where we have no daylight. And so that's why it's important to me, because I can see in my own life how these things slot together in the way that I feel and how my behavior is.
And I think that it's important to understand that we should be paying attention to these things in our lives. It's something we're not taught.
Yeah.
We're not taught to pay attention to this and document it and write it down. But if we did do that, which you and I both do, I can tell you, I wouldn't be here doing what I'm doing. I wouldn't have learned what I've learned about my own health and my own body and what it needs. And when I have better control of that and a better understanding of that, then I can work with a doctor that wants to work with me better to understand what I need if I need something medically beyond what I'm doing now. I think it's really important. It's hard to talk to your doctors about this, and we need more doctors to talk about this with.
And at the same time, I want to say, because I know the feeling of perimenopause and menopause for some women is that completely overwhelms you. And so, what is the one thing that you can look at? Look at your sleep. What's
We got to
happening
start
with your
somewhere.
sleep? You got to start somewhere, and sleep is the easiest place to start. All you have to do is note, how many hours did I sleep?
Well, most people have one of these little phones.
Exactly.
Do a memo. You don't
Exactly.
have to handwrite anything. There's so many
Exactly.
ways that you can
Yep.
document today.
Yeah, because again, thinking about that kind of when we're in perimenopause and menopause and we're feeling this way and it's hard, sometimes you just do what you can do. And so, yes, I'm at a 401 day Peloton streak as of today, but there are days back in that 150 days when I said, do anything that you can do. And if that is a 5-minute meditation, that's what you do, because I was building the habit. And so when you think about tracking, you're building the habit of tracking. I'm going to track my sleep for the next month. What do I see? Okay, great. That's somewhere that I can start, because you're going to start to feel better. And cannabis can help you with your sleep. It may not fix everything, because sometimes that's related to your hormones too. Cannabis can help you get to sleep. Cannabis can help you stay asleep through the night. And I know that from my personal experience too, right? Of like, how do I consume it for sleep? If I'm struggling with sleep, what do I do? And so, like, that could be an area that a woman chooses to work on first. When we think about this from a perspective of perhaps you're new to cannabis, you're a woman who's never, maybe you had a joint way back in high school, but you've never done anything since, and now it's very different. This is an easy place to start because you're sleeping for most of it, right? And so getting that edible, whether that be a CBD edible or a THC edible or a mix, if you're not comfortable taking THC, try CBD. Non-intoxicating CBD available, everywhere. Know your sources. Don't buy it at a gas station. Make sure that it's, clean and everything. But like, that's an easy place to start with sleep, because what you want to have happen is you just sleep through the night. And wouldn't that be fabulous when you've been struggling with your sleep? And so I think that's a great place for women to start if you feel overwhelmed by
A
all of
very
it.
great place to start.
Yeah.
And not everyone responds to all the cannabinoids the same way for sleep. So it's just a trial and error again, and that comes up quite often. But that's why documenting, at least to some degree. But I also know the reward, find a way to put down in notes a little bit about what you're doing will be helpful to you in the future. What are the top symptoms women come to you with? Which symptoms do they seem to respond to best with cannabinoid therapies?
So this is an interesting place because, I mentioned that I use CBG for hot flashes, and that was back when I wasn't really educated on what perimenopause was and menopause was and what was really happening inside my body. And so definitely in my community, people are talking about hot flashes, and they're talking about sleep, and they're talking about focus, they're talking about joint aches, that kind of stuff. And cannabinoids can definitely help with all of that. However, in my opinion, this is my opinion, not a medical professional, in my lived experience, things didn't truly get better until I started hormone replacement therapy. And so, if you're willing to, and again, do your own research, the study saying it caused cancer has been debunked. But if you're willing to go down that road, what I find is that cannabis just works so much better on top of it, because it's supporting the things, it's like cannabis can support a lot of things, and it can help with a lot of symptoms, and it can help you be more balanced in your ECS, but it can't replace estrogen. It can't replace testosterone. It can't replace progesterone in your system. As I noted, and that article noted, estrogen can help you be more sensitive, your receptors to be more sensitive to picking up those cannabinoids, but the cannabinoids can't actually replace the estrogen. And so to me, that's where I would go with women these days, and I'm doing this training, and I talk to a lot of people, and I do talks at conferences about menopause and what we're looking at. That is where I encourage every woman to explore that. You get to make your own decision. It's your decision, but I feel like I would be doing a disservice to women if I did not say that you should seriously consider hormone replacement therapy, because it has changed my life. And if you are unable to take that because of health conditions that you have, definitely look at taking vaginal estrogen, which is like a topical almost. It does not go systemically in your body. It merely feeds the tissues there. And what the vaginal estrogen helps prevent, this has been shown, UTIs, which women get when they're older. So it gets you out of that UTI cycle. And I don't remember which doctor told this story, but it is out there in public on social media. And she said, her 82-year-old mother got put in the hospital with a broken hip. And the doctors in the hospital were refusing to prescribe for her vaginal estrogen. And this woman is a board certified gynecologist and a menopause doctor, right? And she had to essentially go to bat for her mom and finally said to them, look, the number one killer of women in the hospital is a UTI. My mother will have this vaginal estrogen because it prevents UTIs because you are not going to kill her when she's in the hospital with a broken hip. Something like that. I'm paraphrasing. But she was very strong and she had to go to bat and then got it prescribed. And the nurses didn't know how to administer it. This is how much of a disservice women have been done in this area. She had to teach the nurses how to administer it. It's not hard.
Why are we denying access to some medicine that really makes your life a lot easier? And we have to take into consideration that women need to be able to take care of their health the best way they can, and hormone therapy really does help that. I know you and I had numerous conversations with other groups where I could talk about the importance of hormone therapy replacement and what it can do and make things a little bit easier to handle and make you feel more better in your skin. And that's really important. I think it's a tool that we should have in our toolbox. Do you see more benefit from low dose daily support or symptom specific use? In other words, is it about maintenance, rescue, or both?
Well, as a medical cannabis patient, I, of course, am in the both lane. So, because I know, and I've talked about how I do need that daily maintenance for me. But if I try to separate those two, right? If I separated those two and I pretended I didn't have PTSD and I were just a recreational user, I'd definitely be trying it for the acute stuff. Like I mentioned, like low motivation, being irritated at everybody, because this is what we start feeling in perimenopause, right? This is the we do not care club, right? Think about that, right? We just don't care. You're hungry, there is a refrigerator, go get it. We don't care. Like cannabis could definitely help that, right? Every woman has to play around. Does that mean that you have daily maintenance cannabis? Are you 420ing every day except you're doing it at 2:30? Are you doing it at 5 p.m.? Like, what's going to help you have the best experience of your day? Is it a 9 p.m. thing to help you sleep? So I am in the both because I know that it can be used in an acute situation. And I know that overall I feel better if I have a daily amount. So if you think about cannabis kind of like a vitamin, then you're on the daily, right? If you think about cannabis as a pain reliever, then you're going to use it in an acute situation. You can have both of those. You can be doing both of those things in taking care of your health, taking your vitamins and taking something for your headache. So that's how I see it. So if I were not a medical consumer of cannabis, right, I'd probably end up as a daily consumer during perimenopause because I'd be feeling so much better. And I think that's the key for people. We just want women to feel better. And this is a easy, as long as it's legal in your state, easy way to do that. There's nothing wrong with it. Like really letting women understand the stigma is real and there really is nothing wrong with consuming cannabis. This is just stuff that you were taught. It's just being primed and wired. If you're around my age, 58, you know the war on drugs. You know the frying pan with the eggs in it. This is your brain on drugs. That's not true for cannabis. It is a plant that grows in the ground. This plant evolved over the millennia to be what it is. It's been used for thousands of years by humans. It's just a plant. There's nothing evil about it. There's nothing morally wrong with it. It's a plant. And so I would encourage people to, if they're like feeling very hesitant, women particularly, all people, but women in particular, to like really think about, well, how was I programmed in this? Is this really so bad? Because in my experience these days, having a glass of wine is a really bad decision for me. There's no shame in it.
There should never be any shame in taking care of your health,
Yeah.
ever. This is something we have to move forward on and past. We know our bodies better than anybody else, and we need to be able to say, this makes me feel better. I need this. It's not something that's harmful and not something that is going to harm anyone else in the process. So we need to be having these conversations. What would you say to someone who feels disconnected, exhausted, and invisible in her own healthcare?
This is so hard because I've been there. I'm sure you've been there. There are many women who are there. And I understand and have been there for the feeling absolutely exhausted and I don't want to do any of this. And if you will do some of this, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, I think is what I want to say. I know it feels overwhelming. What I would want to say to women is you are worth it. It's worth it. You are worth it to take this time to take care of your own health and to love yourself in this way. And if it feels like a stretch to love yourself in this way, is there one tiny little step forward that you could take? Is it, okay, I'm going to track my sleep for the next week? It's a tiny step forward. I'm going to buy that CBD gummy.
We so appreciate you dropping
That's a
in.
great entryway.
Your time
What
and
is the
support are
smallest step
invaluable
that you
as
can
we
take
strive
toward
to
improving your
educate and
health
advocate
in
for the
this way?
transformative
And there is a
potential of
light at the end
medical
of the tunnel.
cannabis.
And get help.
Remember,
find a
you
good
have only one
practitioner,
health
find
and one
groups
life,
around you. Women
and no
everywhere
one
going
lives
through this
them
right now.
but you.
There are people out there.
Let's continue this
right now
journey
doing
together.
this.
Subscribe and hit the
Find a
bell
community
icon
online.
to
The
stay
Reddit
updated on our
community, the
latest
menopause group on the
conversations.
Reddit community.
Your
Amazing.
comments and
Go
engagement
there.
fuel the dialogue
Lots of
we
people to
need to
help.
create
Lots of women
change.
there.
Until next
You have
time,
to take
stay
that first
empowered
little step, and if
and
that
keep
first little step
exploring
is just
the
reaching out
wonders
to
of your
somebody and just buying that
endocannabinoid system.
CBD gummy or just tracking your sleep, that's the step to take. Because once you take one little step, then you can take another. And I know it's really hard when you're down and you're in the midst of it and it seems like that nothing is going to change and your body is just giving up on you. You can get through that. And I don't remember if we've talked about this on this series of podcasts or not, but I had an autoimmune disorder develop during perimenopause, and it's really changed my life and it's really messed up good chunks of it. And I'm still feeling better, right? It feels totally overwhelming. It was totally overwhelming when I was told, here's a cream and you're going to be on it for the rest of your life and no other information, because again, neglect of women's healthcare. To where I am now with a great doctor who said, I can help you. Yes, I'll work with you. Let's explore hormones. It is such a different place to find, and it's not her, it's me. It's what's going on within me. I have a great doctor, but I only have a great doctor because within me, I said, no, I'm not going to be on this cream for the rest of my life with no other information about what is happening to my body. I'm going to find someone who can help me. And that was me, but then it was also her, right? It's like, okay, I need an expert to help me do this thing that I see could help me. Let me find an expert. When it's overwhelming, it seems like that's an impossible task, and you just take one tiny little step at a time. If today the only thing that you can do is write down the phone number that you need to call to make that appointment, that's enough for today. If it is just to say, I'm going to look up and pick out one online menopause service and I'm going to put my email in and I'm going to make an appointment. That's enough. That appointment's not going to be for a couple of weeks.
I just want women to know that you don't have to live here. That's what I was told. And that's what many women are told.
Yep.
This is just what it is. You have to live here. We now know you do not have to live here.
Yep.
There are options on the table. And so we need to make sure this message is getting out.
Yeah. I will acknowledge it is sad that women have to advocate so much for their health, for their health care. And we do. And the advocating that we do today is going to help the women and girls who are younger than us. And
It's
so
going to help
it
generations to
is
come.
worth it, because we didn't have that as the generations above us. They didn't do it. It wasn't there. I'm speaking from my Gen X. We Gen X and we older millennials, we can do this for those coming behind us, whether that's our daughter, our son's wife, or granddaughter. You don't know who it's going to affect. A stranger that you've never met. The fact that I, will talk about the issues is going to help that person. And so that's, it's not a comfortable thing to talk about. But yet here we are talking it through, because if we don't talk and we don't speak up, we're not going to get the word out.
Well, we're making progress now. And we know far more now because of the research that's being done and the firsthand stories that we have. Because we have the ability to share them with one another, to compare and to say, oh, this can work and this can work. This doesn't work. This is why. This is all anecdotal information that is so critical and so important, because the research that we need to do on women during this phase is a long time research. It's not a short time research, it's a long term. So, this is where anecdotal stories like yours come in and become so important. And I appreciate you sharing yours with us today. So
Exactly.
How do you think menopause care would change if the endocannabinoid system was taught in medical schools and included in treatment models today?
I'm going to go on a little rant here,
Okay.
because there are two things there that are not taught in medical school. One is the endocannabinoid system, and the other is menopause. That's how it is in a patriarchy right now. Mary Claire Haver, whether you agree with Mary Claire Haver or not, because there are people who are upset at her because she sells supplements. I don't care. Her information that she gives away is stellar. Her book has a list of questions you can ask your doctor, and you can go in armed with information. It's worth every penny. Let this woman make some money. If it were a guy, nobody would be saying this about her. Okay, and off that rant. But to watch her on the M Factor say, I was a bad doctor because I was never educated on what this was. And I was a bad doctor for many years, and I'm really sorry about that. So it's not taught right now. So there are two things not taught in medical school. And one is about women in past childbearing years, right? It's like we don't exist after that. And the other is the ECS, which oversees everything, right? We've known about this for, gosh, I used to say 30 years, but we're probably at like 35 now. Long enough for this to make it into medical school, long enough to have things, research being done on it. But because the plant mimics something our body already does, and they don't like the plant, we got no research. So I think that a lot of things would change if we could get that in, but we also, for women, have to get in the menopause part. And honestly, given who knows what would come first. It might be menopause, because there's a lot of women making a whole lot of noise. And so those of us who are cannabis advocates, perhaps we need to be making more noise, because this is something that needs to be taught, right? I've had to educate every clinician I've dealt with recently. I go in and educate them. I give them a book. I give them Dr. Sulak's book for clinicians. Sometimes I'll give them Bonnie's book, but something by a doctor where it's like, you need to read this because you need to understand that this exists. And it's been great, right? And I've had doctors who've been receptive, which is nice. And it needs to be taught in medical school, and menopause needs to be taught in medical school.
And I think that we're doing a disservice to the healthcare system, to the practitioners, and to the patient by not teaching these things. Are we going to allow stigma be the thing that holds us back and doesn't allow us to really make sure that we can move healthcare forward and improve people's quality of life? Isn't that what we want? Is for everybody to live their best quality of life today?
Would changing this at the medical level help? Absolutely. But until we get some other freedoms and recognition, it's just a difficult place, I think, right now.
Well, so many doctors still look at, and I don't mean to hit on doctors, but so many doctors still look at women's bodies just like men's. We're not.
Nope.
We're not. We don't function the same. We're not the same. And so we need more studies with women.
Yeah.
Men don't need to be included in it. When you say that we're not teaching the ECS. It's really interesting. I just had an interview with Dr. Gallo from South Africa, who just finished doing a review study on the endocannabinoid system and why it's not taught in schools. And do you know that in research papers, the endocannabinoid system is referenced at least 76,000 times?
Wow.
And it is referenced more than any other of all the other systems put together in the research. And we still don't teach it.
Yeah.
So it needs to change. All right, we're going to wrap up here. If you could leave perimenopause and menopausal women with one message about their bodies and the endocannabinoid system and cannabis, what would you want them to know?
Wow, that's a big question. I think that I would want, because we have cannabis in that mix, I would want to say to women, try the cannabis. If you can move past whatever stigma you have to try the cannabis, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. And if you can't get past your stigma, then keep watching us and keep talking to us, because we can get you there. The more you learn about it, then it makes it easier to let go of that stigma, and the more stories that you hear of how it's helped people. So if you can overcome that, that's what I would do, is try the cannabis.
Yeah. I think that's great. I was talking to Dr. Bonnie Goldstein today, and she was saying that she's been doing this for over 18 years as a cannabinoid physician. And she said, it's like, I'm a research nerd and a science nerd. So when I started looking into this, it was like, oh, this all makes sense now. She said there was so much in her medical training that never made sense. But once she started learning about the ECS and about the cannabinoids that the plant makes that mimic what your own system makes, it all started making sense and she could put it together. So that's why these conversations are important. It's why you need to educate yourself. There's nothing stronger than education when it comes to taking care of your health. So we encourage you all to take time to educate about your health and what your health needs, because it is unique to you. Alex, I think we covered a lot. Thank you very much for spending this time with me today and for contributing to the Effective Cannabis newsletter and all the work that you do to support us. It really does mean a lot. So thank you. We so appreciate you dropping in. Your time and support are invaluable as we strive to educate and advocate for the transformative potential of medical cannabis. Remember, you have only one health and one life, and no one lives them but you. Let's continue this journey together. Subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay updated on our latest conversations. Your comments and engagement fuel the dialogue we need to create change. Until next time, stay empowered and keep exploring the wonders of your endocannabinoid system.